Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Labs at Dr. Contrast Live. Well, thank goodness I'm back, and really am excited about being part of the process today. So we can kind of fill in the gaps here on this boat study. This is actually the fourth phase of this empathic study we began some 2 weeks ago. But before I begin, I just want to make a real quick commentary here to all of you who were kind enough to send in messages or notes about my wife's pending physical condition. I really appreciate the time spent there, folks. There's a little bit of a nervous situation the last 2 weeks going through the process when we found out that she had that problem, and we've got it diagnosed. We got the results back, and from the health report just was it 2 days ago. Thank God it's benign. Hopefully it can be treated either chemically, or I don't think surgery is going to be necessary. But I just really take a moment here to thank each one of you for your concern and your prayers and thoughts, and also the concern for everything in my better half. She's been really going through a tough time, and again, my sincere thanks to you for responding, and my sincere thanks for being patient with me. And we're going to pick up the speed here today and get back at it. And I thought the first thing we'll do here is go back for those of you who are maybe just joining in for the first time and wonder. I hope you're there. Others of individuals who have been sending me sketches. Please keep that up. I'm really looking forward to seeing those things. Wanderers, hope you're on board today. If not, if you watch it later, please don't hesitate to send me some of your sketches. You've been making some great progress on some of these speed forms you've been working with, so looking forward to seeing that. But let's go back just a few moments, about 2 weeks ago. This is where it all started. I made a decision when I went into this process about this empathic boat study to kind of go back a little further and define what an empathic sketch is, as opposed to a form study. An empathic sketch is more of an emotional characterization of surfaces or elements that you begin to see in your mind's eye, or you begin to create. It's different from a form study. The form study already exists. It's something that you've already developed the form with, and you begin to develop it, embellish it, and add section or detail and add certain characteristics to that. So it's a known entity. Whereas empathy becomes much more of an emotional approach to, I've used it, for example, in transportation design, product design, interior space design, architectural design. It's a really great universal language, and it requires a really a different form of thinking in terms of seeing how your emotions begin to affect shape, form, and developing creative surfaces. So I started with this sketch up on top here. And I think the stress in an empathic sketch is, notice a lot of sharpness, a lot of softness. So it's a contour change when you switch the Conte crane, which this is made with, is like a terracotta Conte crane. It's got a real hard edge on it, and sometimes you kind of pick it up on its edge. You get a real nice solid strike line. Then you go back to rotate a little bit, and you get that little softness in there. That gives you a little condensation and change of pace in the forms. And what you're looking for in an empathic sketch is the primary two things, both a positive line and a negative line. I consider that line, for example, on the base, a very positive, and the negative is that very abstract, almost softness in there in between this. And again, a good example here, very abstract external and then very solid internal line. So you're looking for that change of pace, thick and thin, that makes it much more contourable, and you begin to see certain things in it. And I've said before, just for what it's worth, you can start at an elevation like we did here, but you can also rotate it and get them into plan view, and all of a sudden they change character. For example, this becomes your center line. You repeat that, and you've got a really interesting series of things to deal with in terms of plan view studies. And last but not least, the third element that makes empathic sketching so valuable from the creative point of view is it establishes a shape or an emotion. Number two, it can change its character from elevation to plan view. And the third element is you can begin to pick it apart or pick into it and get section detail. For example, it gives you a whole lot of newness. How do you develop a form around a center line, for example, or an elevation, and put a new section to it? So that's where we started. And for me, this is good. It's a bit of a review as well. And then we're going to pick up the speed here, just go through the review process here. So from that series of sketches, we went through a whole series of variations on theme. And then the last one I did 2 weeks ago was to get into this catamaran look, which I think is going to be the real theme here for the rest of the program here and getting this boat process resolved. Catamaran, in a sense, is twin sponsons, for example, two outboard riggers, and from this sketch, and if you notice, this became part of the whole process of those cantilevered outriggers. And then I looked at that canopy system, and I pushed all that rearward and thought, that's kind of neat. I go through a series of sketches with it, and we ended up with some form studies like this, where it's not quite a catamaran yet. It's a little bit of a negative area in here. It has a little bit of a catamaran character here, but again, notice I pushed a cockpit river and really got real fluid with the thing, and a lot rounder in some of the shapes that we're dealing with here. And I did a little from some front end sides about where the canards might be or the foil systems could be. So it's going to end up being a hydrogen powered, based on, I'll show you some sketches later on here, probably that I've developed through the course of the past week or so. Hey, Doug, how are you, man? Good. The report to surgery stat. Report to surgery stat. Well, it's going to be on me this time, Doug. But again, I can't thank you for joining forces here today, and so much appreciate you, Doug. Thank you so much for all you've done for us and your concerns for, pardon me, Pam and the rest of the gang here. Really much appreciated, Doug. So I'm going to try and get some things squared away here today from the point of view of being much more, pardon me. Here we go. A lot more focused in on getting this thing down to this boat study for this empathy process to work. And the last sketch I worked with about a week and a half ago was this family of forms here, where I actually got the extended the thing, pulled the cockpit, the survival cell rearward, and started getting this catamaran look, but it's still a little massive in terms of, a little bit heavy in here. I wanted a lightweight approach to getting this boat system to work. And these are little thumbnail sketches based on maybe front elevations of what the foils are going to do once this thing begins to lift out of the water and begin to fly. So that was the last sketch. Now from that study, I went, okay, that starts to hit a premise here. Notice these little vignettes here. Started a little more character to it, a little lighter, a little bit more floatable, a little bit more lift in it. Landon's here. Hey, Landon, how are you? Good to have you on board. So I really went from this study into some little elevations here, and then went back to these little studies here, pardon me, front views and elevations. And all of a sudden, I got much more spring in the line, a little lighter through the water line, and I just started to lift that up. So from that series, the second session we, I think, got together on, I began to generate this character and switch gears and get into more elevations like these. I started to look at getting a little rounder, a little more bulbous. Notice the plan view study here, a real thin needle-like form with these hydrofoil wings that come out at flight. And we're going to take advantage of the shape and surface of this stuff. And I got a lot quicker. Some of the elements in here, this started to look intriguing. Real gossamer looking, almost kite-like, and just very interesting. Minimal surface work, putting a lot of the ballast in the body of the form, and again, keeping the cockpit rearward. A little tail fin for stabilization, etc. And then it's showing you here number 3. And these little slots in here, for example, this became the wing form, which was that, and this became the wing form, which was that. So kind of burrowing into the body side. And at speed, it would just kind of lift, and as we begin to fly in the water at speed, it would just lift the surface of the vehicle up and take it from there. So I started with those studies and carried on a little bit with this and moved on to these, and went from the, notice these are a little bit more on the organic side, almost fish-like or whale-like or porpoise-like. And then I went from that into a stealth study. And what if I went sheer with the same, went pure hydrofoil, where these things bury in the water? Then you've got these wing systems that come out and begin to help you float this thing through. So I went a lot more stealth with this beauty. And it was okay, but it looked more aircraft than it did boat. So I went back to this very organic look here, and I kept going back and forth, not because of indecision. I was just searching for the right formula to give me what was known as a cantilever or catamaran, and into a cockpit rear, and into a foil system. So those 3 pieces began to dictate what the form began to do as a result of understanding what the empathy sketches began to tell me when I first started the program some 2 weeks ago, 4 sessions ago. So I carried back, then went from there into these. I said, okay, let's go back to some basic square one thinking here. Went back to some little thumbnail sketches with just pencil, and went back into much more of the organic. And things began to happen in here, for example. And again, the plan view, a little bit lighter weight, getting some minimum weight into this thing was a very essential piece. A little bit heavy here and heavy-handed in some of these sketches. But again, I started to see some things happening in here that began to tell me about cantilever. So maybe this is a clue to opening that up and splitting it and going to a dihedral system, like a twin boom with the survival cell rearward, and taking it from there. Again, plan view where it's much more needle-like, almost like porpoise type. Just very thin, but it didn't have that catamaran look, the twin boom that I was expecting to kind of materialize. So I finished those sketches up, and this was the second week, I think. And again, pardon me, folks, Doug and Landon, this is more of a review for me to kind of bring myself back up to speed and take it from there. But again, one last thing, notice this little sketch is intriguing to me, because all of a sudden you look at where the cockpit or the cabin, the survival cabin is, survival cell is elevated. So I kind of brought it up. Well, that's kind of interesting, but maybe from a hydrodynamic point of view, it might not be too to stable. So if I brought that cockpit and buried it inside the form, that could be kind of neat. So I went back in. Again, what really unique to me about this whole program, about this boat study, was how really undulating it was. Find a solve, then all of a sudden open up new problems. Find a resolution, open up new problems. It was a great challenge in terms of putting all the pieces together to make this thing look like I wanted it from the visual vision of the empathy sketch we showed you just a few moments ago. So from that page, I went right back into a real quick empathy strike, and then went back into empathy again. And lo and behold, did a couple. This is probably one page of 6 that I cranked out on that particular day. The second session, end of the second session, or probably end of the third session. No, probably end of the second session. And I began to look at something, and then all of a sudden, this looked a little less hydroponic, but this had some really interesting shape to it. I thought, this is nice. It started to take on a personality. What if I stretch this and pull this back and use that canopy surface in here and this drop off in the sail section, and as its quick return. And since I want to go hydrogen power with this thing, maybe along the boards here, for example, this has enough hull width in it that's about maybe 3.5 to 4 feet that can kind of stack up these hydrogen wafers as a power source. But it needed stability, it needed a tack point, it needed a foil system to kind of anchor this thing to get it up and lift it off the water once that thing began to generate speed, etc. So that became an inspiration for the following. So when I got to here, I said, okay, now I wrapped up the end of the last session we were together with these sketches, and I thought all of a sudden things started to kind of boom for us a little bit. And these are really quick hands-on sketches. And if you notice, let me organize these sketches here for a moment, pardon me. If you notice, what I love to do from session to session when we go live on Tuesday and Thursday is switch mediums. I'll go newsprint, I'll go bond paper, I'll go tone paper, I'll go watercolor. I mean, I just like to move things around and keep it active. But I went back to the more organic look, and all of a sudden things started to shape up, especially with this shape right here. This lower sketch had kind of the needle-like approach that I wanted to see, but it was a little bit too bulbous here, so I thought, well, maybe it's a little bit too soft, too round. But there was some really exciting, look at the gesture in these guys, and that's what I was after. These sketches, above all else, what they taught me was to get the gesture down, right back again to empathy, because this is more form related as opposed to the emotional and empathy sketch. That empathy sketch was done to get me to here, and again, very helpful in terms of putting these pieces together. So all of a sudden there was some, again, these twin foldable wing systems that come out at speed when this thing begins to lift up, but I needed something to sponsor this thing or support it as it lifted out of the water, and again at speed, sometimes gaining some really incredibly powerful. It's almost like the America's Cup racers, like the New Zealand team or the English team or the Italian team. These flying boats, that's what I was really looking for, a flying boat that has some real a different character to it, but yet embodies some of the fuel systems and some of the propelling systems and material systems that are coming into play in the next generation of those races, those cup racing series. So here we go. I started this one, and I switched gears to this one. And again, notice it's now down. All of a sudden, this page was extremely helpful because I went back to organic and a big inlaid scoop in this thing. Again, I began to flip with this very buoyant looking body form or hull system, which in shape would kind of taper in into a peak point at the center line of the vehicle. Again, back to that dark note, but this all of a sudden, this started to tell me something about aha. That's the kind of weight I want to look at. That opened up some doors here in terms of making some very interesting progress in getting this thing together. So on this last sketch, this is the last series of sketches I did, I think week 3 of phase 3 in this thing, but that character, save a few pieces, started to tell me something about the whole program here. A little weighty back here yet, but again, just the generation is such that you begin to win some and then you lose some, and you see some things happening, then you adjust accordingly. I think that's one of the great things about the design process. There's never a real, yes, this is a right answer, or that's a no answer. There's always a subjective and that very objective approach to bringing both forces together to kind of give you a whole new paradigm or a whole new concept to look at. So no matter what your discipline is, whether it's transportation, product architecture, interior space, it applies universally. Doug, if you're still there, Landon, agree or disagree? And this has really be helpful to me. I'm wading in some deep water here, so I need some assistance here to kind of verify what we're talking about. I think the more you move out of your comfort zone, and I think that's the whole process. I think why this whole program, this is a fourth study in this boat study. The more you move out of your comfort zone, the more comfortable it becomes, because you begin to learn some things and discover some things that become absolutely profound, and you begin to put that back into the creative mix, and your work becomes much more emboldened as a result of that. And I think, so help me out here, Landon, and Doug, if you've got 2 cents, toss it in there, and I'll just keep going here. So from this sketch, then all of a sudden that situation came up with my wife, and we had to kind of drop 2 or 3 programs here to get that taken care of. But in the interim, when things start to solve themselves a little bit, I went right back in, and I'll use this sketch to begin with here. I'm going to lay these in just, again, I've got a series of sketches here. If you can see, I went back to just basic, good old-fashioned spitting on the table pencil sketches, and took this shape and began to really massage it in terms of, all right, what kind of hull design do we want to get to here? How is this going to play into getting the process started? So let me get rid of the sketch, and I'll walk you through some of these guys based on some of the history here. Started from that last tone paper study, going through a series of, let's do this, we're going to save some time. We'll open up a couple of here at a time and kind of spread them out. So I went from there, and then all of a sudden, it started to take on a different character. And again, notice the evolution is such that, you know, you don't rest in one place. If you ain't moving, you ain't moving, right? I mean, that's the thing that's so great about don't stand still. You get shot at. You can't hit it's very difficult to hit a moving target. So we keep moving through the process here. So these sketches became extremely powerful or helpful to me in taking this catamaran system, this catamaran hydrofoil, hydrogen-powered piece, really into another level here altogether. So all of a sudden, look how the character changed as a result of seeing that one sketch. All it took was that one sketch to open up the firepower to get this thing to kind of read a little bit for us. So there they are. The relationship started to take on its own character. So from there, started here, put a little section into it, a little weighted yet. This is all mass in here, and this is all mass in here. All of a sudden, you don't see it here, but often look at this. It opens up a little more, slowly sneaking that hull up a little bit and getting down to minimal surfaces. A little bit 3/4. Now this starts to get that catamaran character, but it doesn't. But I close it off up here. Now I don't know if that's a wise move or not, to close off and bring that thing into a peak, and then get that chisel. To provide a sponson or a foil at the nose of this thing to get it up and stabilize it. So that's a couple of sketches here. Let's kind of move them through here. I'll move them out of the way. Take you down the line. Now we're starting to see some real, now I opened it up. Notice this started to really take on some real character here, folks. Where literally from that study, notice, I'm going to go back to this for a moment. Notice how this guy here started catamaran it, split it up, but then I brought it back just out of pieceability. Is it going to work or not? I'm not quite sure, but I still had the premise of lightweight sponson, cockpit survival cell rearward, and a lot of floating devices, just pure air, less material. So this began to help to generate this next pass of sketches. Is where we were. Notice all of a sudden we're splitting it up, getting some intake stuff and some thrust pieces up, and again lightening up. Now notice the gesture in this thing. All of a sudden now look how much lighter that form starts to get. And it started to take on a really interesting character. So now, then from this study, went to the next page, and what I do, I've got a bad habit, and I start a concept sketch. I'll just a variation on theme instead of going all over the place. I'll look at what's in it, look at its chemistry, look at its DNA, and just maybe adjust here and adjust there. And I think, for what it's worth, let me just stop for a moment. Landon, if you're still there, one of the great things about working with you, and what I respect about working with you, is this: that you begin to learn. And you always have had that sense, but you begin to see much more justification, and you don't have to create something totally unique all the time you sketch. If you have a good battle plan to start with, I think it's always good, for example, to take the assets that you've got in those sketches and begin to refine them. I mean, that's what makes great manufacturers great. They don't change the paradigm. They don't change the chemistry. They don't change the character. They refine what they have, and it creates much more of an excellence. So that's what I try to achieve with these sketches. Now, it started here, and I'm into it. Look at the plan view. Now it's really open. This is open-ended. So it's a whole big, it's a definitely floating catamaran with a survival cell rearward and just cantilevered off the sponson sides. A little bit of perspective view here of this guy, where all of a sudden, look at that guy, and that opens it up quite a bit. Canard, and maybe a sponson here, or a foil system, front and rear, with a real shallow, small survival cell cockpit study in there. So that was interesting as well. So it's that. Let's get rid of these guys here. We'll kind of stack them up. Then I went into this. The family of forms, kept building off that same theme here. I'm just going to separate these out a little bit. So there we are there. And here, there we are. There's a couple more in the same family, looking at some of these shapes, going back again to some of the rounder forms here, but still maintaining. Notice I bridged this with almost like a BMW F1 program over years ago, the walrus approach, where this thing had two splitters coming down and had a bridge across it to kind of connect this, stabilize it. But again, the weights here were very, very offsetting, a little bit, way too much weight in terms of through the midsection, through the cockpit area. Then I've been kind of slamming up a little bit and then just opened it, just shortened it just a bit, but the same process, trying to get this thing put together here. Then from this sketch went to this sketch, and all of a sudden now the personality is coming back, much longer, really floated. And now notice very, very interesting floating cockpit study here, but this is more jet-like as opposed to being more hydrogen-like. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. I think if I were to cover that process up there, the tail section, this starts to take on some personality. Again, with the split wings, these concealed wings that come out at speed and give you some stability at speed. And this is the elevation study of that one study, the one sketch we've got there. So that's where we are there. And let me move along here one more time. Let's see. Now, from the evolution, now I went back to just basic thinking. Again, let's bring this one back. From this study here, I went back into these guys. Notice how massive that is. Way too much weight. It just shifted right back into the things I did not want to express that were starting to develop in some of the earlier sketches. So I went right back to it and said, okay, let's go back and get a little bit more. Let's get this weight. Let's get this minimal surface approach to look at for us here. Let me just isolate this one for a moment here. And then all of a sudden, from that gesture, from that weight, notice A, B, and C. C started to take on that ha-ha. Maybe this is it, very secret ballast underneath this thing. Again, foils here, foil there, and listening to lift to get this thing. And maybe this is a dual system in the elevation. Maybe there's twin systems out there to help me get that thing up off of the water and begin to fly with this thing. But I think the gesture was starting to get there. The weights were looking good. I mean, it all of a sudden had a lot of stealthiness and slim front approach, wings, and then again that very isolated cockpit, and then the canards and the foils underneath underneath the body surface. So let's go back, and I'll go back now. All of a sudden, look what begins to happen. They're really opening this thing up. Just the evolution is now taking on a whole new character. Let me stop here for a moment. Doug and Lynn, if you're still there, is this making sense? Helping at all, or? I'm going to go too quickly here. I just want to give myself a little bit of time here to kind of catch up as to where I was 2 weeks ago. And now we're kind of into the fold here of beginning to really tune into this whole process about what this sketch or what this concept might look like, or what we're trying to put together like in time to come here. A very nice final rendering of this thing at speed on the water. But again, the evolution to me was interesting. Where I started and where I'm going to end up is always a mystery, but it's always a great thing to trail through. So here we are. From this series, went to this series of sketches, and look at now, we're really getting this whole drama of these very extended dual catamaran pieces. But again, brought it back to familiar. And again, canard underneath it, and the balance beam, and then underneath it, the sponson here. Again, the hydrofoil piece up front. Again, the floating wing systems are kind of buried in the surface itself. They, at speed, when you get to the lift, they open up and give you some flight capabilities to stabilize the vehicle itself. And again, front overhead 3/4, and then a rear 3/4. Do we want to slide this thing back and give yourself a ladder effect or some propulsion exhaust from the hydrogen system? The hydrogen cells could be buried in through here, like 3 or 4 stacked up, or else up in this front sponson area that provide the energy transfer piece up in the a catwalk, and then right back into the rear deck area. So rear 3/4, another rear 3/4 from the rear, a little bit overhead. We really see the real svelte, the real slimness of this survival cell. And again, these 2 kilopeds that come out and kind of grip you, the body form itself. So that became another exercise. Interesting. I started to take a much more advanced, pushing the envelope a little bit and taking some chances with these shapes and surfaces. And again, really having fun with this thing and opening up some real lessons, some really insightful lessons for me about where to place elements, what the keys were, what to embellish, what to leave alone, what to really highlight, and above all else, I think there were 3 things that really I wanted to stress, and that was number 1, catamaran, hydrofoil, hydrogen powered, but in the same, embodied in those three elements were lightweight, minimal surface, and extremely quick looking. I mean, very, very, very minimal, almost gossamer-like, almost wing-like. So here we are. There's two sketches here. Let's go back over this thing. Now let's get rid of these guys, and now the evolution takes place again. Now it really starts to take on some character because I'm really stretching it out now. I'm saying, okay, let's take some chances with this guy. All of a sudden, we're going to move through this thing and really look how much thinner this thing now is. Look how much more wicked it begins to look. Same packaging problem, hydrogen cells in here. This is a minimal surface cockpit. This whole thing comes around. That provides a ballast underneath. That whole shape and underneath the water, almost like wedge-like or V-type. Show you that later on some of the sketches we might do today if we have time. But again, notice how this thing opens up quite a bit. And really, here's a good idea over here. Look how that cell just kind of wraps around, becomes this little pod that kind of sits in between these two sponsons and provides the power source for this machine to run. Again, notice I'm really, I shouldn't say this, but I kick myself in the shins for doing this, but I think now we're getting some personality in this form that starts to read like we started initially with, especially look at this gesture here. Really almost everything's kind of moving in the same direction. I kind of reversed the nose piece on this thing, but it has some character to it that I really kind of looked at from the point of view of that this is something we can build on. Do I need the intake area here? Maybe not. Maybe we just bring that forward like we did down here. But again, moving little subtle pieces around to get the forms to read and sing. And again, notice this shape right there, that egg form right there, that becomes your survival cell. And entry egress area. Again, foil, foil, and foil. So it's a triple setup here to kind of get you up on the water and keep you stabilized. And once again, guys, Doug, Landon, please, if you help me out here, respond-wise. Is this making some impact? Is there some newness in this thing, you think, or am I going down the wrong avenue here? Really appreciate your time and effort here to stay with me, guys. Really, really good. So, but I think the exciting part here was all of a sudden it started to take on some real chemistry and some really impact here about the next generation of foil systems for boat racing. So let me move along here, and let's see, we're at, let's see, there it is. Now we kept going up and back again. Took a moment and just went in there and took a look at, again, some plan views and some elevation studies here. And again, notice a lot more wedge-like in this one here. Oh, let's move this out here together. Let's put this together with this. There we are. It kept coming back and forth with this thing. Look at the family of forms and studies to kind of move this thing around a little bit. Some very interesting looking front elevation studies about where these wings would be, where the foils would be placed, and where the front end character of the nose cone might be. And again, back into a plan view. Do we want to really close in the lobster claws or the two kilopeds on this program and get that all lined up? And then again with the same, again, these canards are, this becomes that in the plan view. Then just kind of flare off the shape itself and you've got it under control. So those are back to very basic little section studies and so forth. And in this shape, this survival cell underneath has a very elegant looking form to it that is almost minimal surface unto itself. Again, I tried from this, I went back and said, well, what if we move the whole survival cell forward? Well, it changed the character quite a bit, and it really wasn't a healthy look at it. I prefer to keep it rearward because it kind of strengthens the form of this being a real high-speed foil system and puts the cockpit rearward where you actually need it in the sight lines. It's all digital, for example, and it's all hydroponic or hydrogen-powered, so it wouldn't have really a huge impact. To me, it just changed the character too radically. So interesting form, but it's really not boat-like. So those are all set. Then I went back into again and went back to rear. And again, this is interesting. Now, these are the last two sketches, I think, that I've looked at here today. This is where we kind of ended up for the day here. All of a sudden, I think it starts to take on some character. Again, the overhead, the plan view, opened it up a little bit. This almost open series of floating. Again, foil, rear, foil, and foil. Once they're in the water, they're buried for a little bit of a 3/4 study at speed as it lifts out of the water. And again, pardon me, same thing here, elevation sketch. little perspective study here, and then right down into, and again, these little areas, and this is, again, foil to foil to foil, so it actually sits up on 3 areas here. Actually, it's 2, 4, and 6, so it's got a lot of foil base here to kind of suspend itself. But again, look how thin that surface becomes, and again, it weights up a little bit here. But again, it's the weight is deceptive, because in the elevation it looks sort of massive, which is giving me room to kind of put the hydrogen cells in place. But at the same time, gives me a real opportunity to kind of, since it's so thin in section, look at the section weight in through here. Very thin in a plan view, for example, and like in this case here, it's very thin, but the elevation side looks real minimal looking. And I think, again, notice again, really emphasizing this very simple, almost egg-shaped foil here to kind of work with, which we kind of need to deal with. So that's where the last few days is when I really spent some time from the last stream we had, that I showed you in review here, putting some time in, just putting some sketches together to kind of keeping it down, getting it down to the real important part was getting it down to real minimal surfaces. What's going to matter the most? Keep it lightweight, keep it very sleek, keep it very hydrogen based, keep it very catamaran-like. Maybe I tighten this up a little bit more, as you can see, but it still has a catamaran look. I don't want too much width in there to kind of work with, to deal with. But again, really very hopeful in terms of, at least I think I found a theme that really works well. So let me kind of get rid of these guys. And I just want to take a moment here, and we'll switch gears and go to newsprint. I got a ballpoint pen on here. And I think one of the things that was really unique to me was just going to get a center line down here. What I would really like to work with is the following. Maybe it's this. Here's that survival cell. That's that. Now, maybe that comes off now, almost tadpole-like, and it just has this. Comes off the tail of this beauty. Then again, out of that, maybe this comes off here, and that comes off there. And then we begin to take that and break it. And again, just gotta get that, the center line up here. Let's get that to break. We turn this paper, gotta get this, there it is. And there it is. A little more body side here, let's kind of kick that into place. So we're gonna draw through this. Notice the evolution keeps, I just keep trying to refine this thing and hoping not too much to lose some of the character that we're after. Let's bring these inboard. Now, instead of having this, let's just do this. Canopy. Survival cell. Let's take that right back. Little sidewall. And quick little plan view. Maybe you don't need that much mass in the back of this thing. Maybe it's more of a dart like so. Hey, Wander, how are you? Dr. Godfrey, hey, good to see you. First time chat from you. So glad your family made a stream. Hope all is well at home for you and your wife. Is doing better. Yeah, great. That's terrific. Wander, so much to have. Thank you so much for being back on. Did you miss did you see the first part of the presentation? I went back and reviewed some things. If not, I'll go right back in and take some time and be with you here and to bring up to speed. So thank you so much for joining forces with us. It's great to have you on board. Now I'm looking forward to seeing your sketches. So Wanderer, you're doing some nice work. So keep up the good work here, and we'll kind of take you home here with this thing. So I'm just looking at, for example, let's go back to this sketch for a moment here. This last guy here, just looking at this study. Now, I don't know if if this large tadpole dart at the back is where we want to work. So if we kind of come back up to the surface and did this, so let's do this. And we just got much more of a trailing sponson up of this guy. What does that start to look like? I don't know. A little bit of an inside weight here. And then the canopy itself. And the wing system, which is right there. There and there. Those foils come out. So there we are. I mean, do you want to go that? Is it really this kind of a fish egg look at the back? I don't know how many dart-like it is or not. Let's take a peek at this guy here. Let's see if we can kind of get this thing into some sort of a what that might look like in another view here. Maybe it's this. side sponson in place, but there's a rear 3/4 of that guy. I don't know. I just there's something about maybe this weight is a better transfer than some of the things I'm doing back here. For example, these double wing forms. Maybe it comes off the tail section of this thing and just drops right in the actual surface itself, the water. But let's see what happens here if we just do this. Let's go back in there and do a little thumbnail sketch here. If this might be the right ticket here. Let's bring this into place. Let's get that underbelly in place. Let's bring that sharp line right through here. And let's take a second here and just see what happens. The survival cell, and this very interesting drop. Canard. Let's get this shape to kind of really come off of that form. It breaks. Comes back in again, gives us this. It's downhill just a bit. Comes forward on itself, and then it just picks up that shape, which now gives me this. I'm going to pick up some sort of sense here. Just a real pure, almost lifting body where this thing just comes up out of the water, just kind of lifts on you. But again, this whole idea of the plant, is it winged, or is it just the simple point here? Maybe this guy comes off, but like we've got back here, and really eliminates a lot of the weight, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't know. What do you think there, Wanderer? Doug? Landon, you guys still on board here? Is this making any sense? A lot of fun to just kind of go through. I'm just trying to keep this whole open area up front here in this catamaran that we're looking at to really make a big difference here in terms of what we're looking for. Anybody, any comment at all about this nice little go around here? Do we go back to something like this? Or do we go back to something like we're just showing you here in terms of any preference here, guys? Really be helpful. I think there's something about getting this whole weight in here, these sponsors, very light, almost gossamer-like. So it's kind of a neat deal here to work with. So anybody, please help me out here, guys. Any commentary at all? It's such an interesting form to deal with here. Let's go back in again here. Vertical? Is it that kind of a look? There's a little bit of that there. Let's get this interaction here with this catamaran, almost like a real severe pinch up front into the canopy. Around again, maybe a little bit of section line here to break it. That tells where we are. Maybe this comes back underneath, a little more mass to it. But again, we still have that survival cell that comes underneath here, tucks in. Let's draw through that. That's actually, we're not going to see that far side shape there. So let's just kind of get this out here. Oops, sorry about that. Let's get the canopy set up here for the survival cell. Form, there's a bit of a shape in this guy. Very round to crisp, round to crisp. And right out of there. Wing, wing, and again, show what that thing looks like when it's fully extracted here. Comes around and spins out of that area there. Cast a shadow on this pod side here, so we get that. There's its pocket, and there's its pocket. So it sits right inside that upper sponson area here, but it just kind of opens up. A little more of a flight stability piece when this guy is at speed, and it's actually flying on the water. So a little overhead 3/4 here, guys. Hey, how you doing, Doc? Good to see you. Love it when the master goes quiet and works. Me too. I just hope it works. Hey, very good here, guys. Sometime 22 months, 7 months streak. All right. Wanderer, yeah, hey, Wanderer, you still there? What do you think? It's Starship Captain Nemo. Hey, there's the 20 months. Hey, Captain Nemo, great to have you on board. How are you, man? So good to have you back on board, and thank you very much for your very kind commentary when I had that situation come up. No, don't be sorry for turning in late. It's always good to have you on board at any time. It's great to have you on board. Captain Nemo, terrific. So we're trying to put some pieces together on this what I refer to as this very busy with programming. Yeah, I can imagine you are. So again, thank you so much for taking the time here. We were trying to just put some pieces together on this whole catamaran hydrofoil system, hydrogen-based power system. And I'll go back and through the end of the stream here and bring you back up to speed on some of these we're dealing with. Just with some of these pencil sketches, a lot of evolution from day one in the actual transfer of putting together these pieces from the empathy sketch of some 2 weeks ago, but a lot of revolution so forth all the way through. Just interesting. The concept is very, thank you, Shadow. The concept is a little bit daunting. I think there's the more I look at this whole thing about having this single main plane in the rear end of this thing, instead of having the typical, this is much more, I think, expected, where you've got these canards coming off the body side of the form, but maybe having a ballast beam at the back of the cockpit area, the survival cell, is the way to go. So I mean, kind of a nice thing to deal with here. Once we get the forms to work with here, I'm still looking at, let's do this. Let me finish this sketch here for a moment. This is all negative. Now, this looks a little clumsy in the plan view. Let's go and kind of finish this up. I was there, but that could be interesting. I mean, the whole idea of just having this whole thing coming in together. Now, let me just do this here real quickly. As far as that cockpit area, you've got survival cell up here. Then down below, what this guy actually does is this, comes in and just opens up a nice little tulip shape that does that. And out of that, up on top here, you've got this, you've got that slice coming through here where the actual canards are. That comes out of, that's all hidden now because you've got these body sides that come in. Do this, it's got that little weight to it that comes in and picks up that extractor underneath that just opens up itself. That goes there, there's a little bit of the mass that we're looking at. And this all comes forward to pick up that actual nose piece that you don't see here. So it's actually coming off of this, off of this. This is all hidden. This area in red is the base of that cockpit. Let's do this in red. There's a survival cell. There's the actual form itself. So very minimal. Wing, front end, hydrofoil area. Again, picking it up here. Let's just run this in here. That's where that pinch comes off to give it the actual catamaran look. That pinch comes off of here. Again, notice out here, and again, no, a lot of, and then again, right here is where that cockpit's going to form. Cheated view here, but it's right about in that area right there. So you've got this whole survival cell sitting up on top. You need to check it currently into. It's not sure, look it up. You might love a great engineering game. Stormworks. Stormworks, very cool. I might have to build this in Stormworks. Oh, that'd be neat, Shadow. Yeah, how cool would that be? So nice. Let's go there. So that's. I just want to take a moment to show you what this is doing here. As far as the next, this comes along, picks up itself. There's a front view, so to speak, here of what this guy does. He's going to get rid of this thing. So all that to say, when it all comes together, what are we looking at here? Let's get these shapes to come out. Here's my center line. Comes up over the top, gives me the survival cell. I'm going to give myself a split here, and a split here, and a split back here. This comes off of this and stays very vertical. This comes off with a bite line off of this piece here. And it comes out. Just get this up for a second here. This comes out and breaks. Through here, let's draw through it. It comes out and breaks. And it comes right back into the actual form itself. Center line, there it is there. Breaks. You do a drop. And the body side, let's keep this vertical for now. And it does this. Now that comes off of here. Which comes off of there. Comes back in through here. Let me turn this upside down here, folks. Which kind of picks up this. A little stingy here. Let's kind of pull this back a bit here. That's better. Wing foil, surface, into section, and all floating. This whole survival cell just sits in, almost cantilevered on these two arms, these two kilopins. It's just going to hold this form together. Let me stop right there. What do you think, gang? That got some guts to it? Let's see here. What do you think, guys? Passable? I'm really. It's kind of interesting that rear canard area. Really interesting how it just seems to have a lot more balance to it than it does. It takes some of the weight out of it as well. I'm not really a big fan. The gesture is great. We're really close gesture-wise in the body form itself, but something about that being canceled out with this, like we did in that first sketch, I think is really interesting. That might have some real character to it. This, I can't see it. There it is. Yeah, this will work really well, I think, Shadow. I think this is much more functional. Smooths it out, man. Just nice and easy. It just really, what it does, I think, for us, and I think the strength of it is, what it does for us is it really plays up this whole idea of this very, very, very minimal cockpit area that we're trying to scream for. And again, a lot of minimal mass outside this thing. So let me move along here for a second here, guys, and we'll wrap this thing up. So let's put a little bit of geometry in this thing now. Over the center line, around into that shear aspect and then cuts underneath it. Again, through here, let's kind of do this. I'm going to grab a real quick stick here, guys. Put a little bit of tone in this thing and see where we are. All right, sorry for the inconvenience here, but I think this has got some character to it. Let's get this negative out of the way here. This is all going to be open. So this is open. This will be open. It comes up, picks that spot up. So this is all going to go negative. This is all open. Surface. Underneath, a shadow in this guy. Let me drop that off of there. Wing cradle. Wing cradle. Oh, look at that. What do you think, guys? That has some character to it. Let's hope, let's hope, let's hope. I don't know about this box section in here, but that might be, let's see if we extend this guy. You know what? What if we added this? What if we just took that same form and went down a bit and add that to it? Maybe that's a 3-point system here that'll kind of work with this. That's great. It's going to get the shadow in here. Sponson. And let's see if we can put a little bit of surface in this guy here. Me again here. There you go. Well, I don't know, gang. That's there's a lot of content there, but nonetheless, I think we're arriving at something. I think it really is going to look like it's going to work. I think that's you said it well there, Shadow. I'm going to hold on for a moment here, just get your feedback on this conversation here today, guys. It's really very helpful in time here. Nemo, Captain Nemo, what do you think? Just get your input on this, and Doug and Wander, if you're all there, just kind of give me some yays and nays or thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah, it works, or it's crummy, whatever it might be. Let me know, and we can adjust accordingly. So it's been a real evolution. So I want to spend more time doing any sketch work. I think we've kind of gotten there's something really unique about that. I mean, we're really glad. Took another look at this thing. The last sketch we did here, for example, which was getting very dramatic. I mean, the forms were there, floating cockpit, you know, all the sponsors and the foils were there. Anteater nose is cool. Yeah, the anteater nose is really cool. You get that really very aggressive looking piece to it. So I think, and then just being very honest with the fact that these two sponsors are just growing up with this cockpit. And then you've got this very simple tail fin that has a foil on it. And when we get that up to speed, and again, the packaging for the hydrogen system are inside the modules here. We can stack them up 3 or 4 at a piece, and power system back in there and drive that thing right into the tail system here. And I think we've got something to work with here. So I think I'll just keep working on this guy and see what happens with it. But I don't know. Let me just double check here for Nemo and Wanderer. Did you pick up the beginning of the show, the presentation here, Nemo? If not, I'll just go through a real quick encapsulation about where we were here. I'm just going to cover these guys up a bit. Let me do this before we go any further here. That goes there. Sign that beauty. And also has some Star Wars. Yeah, it does. It does. That's interesting. You bring that up. I didn't even think about that. But promise, not cheating. Just doing some sketches here. Let's make sure those documented here. So there we are. Let's go back to I'll make this real brief, and I think you'll see some very interesting evolution here from where we started. Let's go back to this real quickly here. Let me get the sketches organized. Pardon me for a moment here. Get these guys lined up. This is where we started. Very quickly, I'll go real fast here. We started with this 2 weeks ago. There was the empathy study we started with. That was a clue here. A couple of weeks later, a week later, I ended that same show, probably that first week, with this thumbnail sketch or series of forms putting together the actual story itself. Definitely interesting how it all come together here. I started to feel like, okay, we've got some elements here, but maybe it's more cantilever, maybe it's less mass in the middle, and then still keeping that cockpit rearward to really make this thing work. Then I went back and did some front elevations on foiling systems and what that might look like, and then again back to elevations. Once I got that completed, I came right back in again, went back to more of some of the organic, real quick pencil sketches to get some character down, look at some very interesting shapes to work with, and kind of put this into pieces here. That was the next step we did. This is the second week near the end of the session. Probably, yeah, the second session, first week. Went back and tried something more stealth-like, and it was okay, but it just didn't have the same feel as it being nautical. But this one came back to a little bit. So that's interesting. Let's go back to that rounder form here for a moment. And I noticed the evolution. Now I went back to, so after I did this sketch, went right back in and, pardon me here, folks. After I did this last series, I thought, let's go back to just basic fundamental thinking. So I went back to just a page of little thumbnail sketches. And then all of a sudden, things started to click here. Something about this form started to hit me a little bit. It's a little bit rounder, bulbous here. But that shape started to really kind of, maybe it's cantilevered. Maybe it's a catamaran-like. Let's see what that does. So from that sketch, I went back to empathy again. I started the end of the show the second week, I believe. Second session, first week, second session. I went back to empathy to show how the sections work, and I picked up on Wanderer's definition here. I've enjoyed seeing that's great. Thanks very much. Gills, yeah, some very definite gills. But I went back into empathy, and for Wanderers, so he had a great question of me a couple of weeks ago about what's the difference between an empathy sketch and a form study. Well, the empathy sketch is more emotional. You don't have an object in mind. You have a character or a spirit about it if it's just emotional. Whereas a form study, from the vocabulary of creativity, it already exists. You're developing a form, and the form is set, and you're working with it, and you're developing it. Whereas an empathy sketch is out there in never land. You're just looking and exploring certain things. I made a big deal out of, and I think it's very important to make a big deal out of the fact that an empathy sketch can give you both an elevation, can give you a plan view look. I mean, it can just change the plan view. Looking down on certain things can be really interesting. Now, I chose this sketch to kind of put section through it. But when I did this one, I thought, wait a minute. Now, this is interesting. Long cantilever, cab rearward. Let's see what happens with that guy. So from that study, I ended up ended the last stream we did with some really quick, what I refer to as some Canson sketches. And all of a sudden, things started to play into this whole idea of getting catamarans to work with here. And interesting set of sketches. I'm just going through this for Nemo's benefit and Wanderer's benefit. So thank you, Doug, everybody for hanging on here. I'll wrap it up as soon as I can here. That was the first pass we did. Then went back into the second sketch, and then all of a sudden this one started to really tell a story. I thought, this has got some character to it. Origin 450. You're probably right. Without even being aware of it, it probably is. That's interesting. Another Origin 450R. But again, the theme there started to take on more nautical. I wanted a lightweight process, something that was very gossamer looking, very water-worthy, and extremely fluid looking, and simple. So that's started there. Then went back into, then this is where we end up today. I did a whole series of there were pencil sketches between the week with my wife's difficulty. I just spent some time from that last series of sketches. For example, this one here in particular, that last series of Canson sketches, just back to basic thinking. One, and then the two. It was just developing the shapes and themes. Oops, let me get back in here. And then this, how the cantilever started to take shape. No, the actual little plan view opening it up in an elevation study, all of a sudden started to take on some real character here. Cantilever, and then into the next one, a little weightier, but again, the same theme started to come home strongly here. Into the next set, overhead 3/4, interesting, jet type. But again, that same character, floating cockpit, two sponsons out there, and catamaraning it, really interesting. Yeah, I think it is too, Captain Nemo. Catamaran, this thing is really interesting. So maybe we'll go back and widen it up a little bit. Again, back to basic thinking again. Again, this one started to hit. It was a little bit more organic, but it had that catamaran look to it, and very, very interesting surface work. Went to this, did a rear 3/4, catamaran again, closing it off up front, and then keeping the pod rearward. Very strong. Rear 3/4, just looking at the geometry thereof. And then into this guy. Now really getting stretchy with this beauty, really mean looking. Wow, the upper one, this upper guy is, and that's the one I think is really starting to tell a story here. That one was really strong. So I think built off of that sketch, and I think the last one I did, I'll show you, that really played into this guy right here, Nemo. Taking that same character, squaring it up a little bit, but getting that same gossamer look to it, and really gutty looking nautical approach to it with sponsons and foils to kind of support it. So there's the next sketch was there. Again, rear 3/4. Getting a little bit awesome hole in the shape. This hexagonal shape is awesome. Yeah, the hexagonal shape. You mean this one here? Oops, sorry about that. This guy here. It looks aggressive. Yes, it does. Thank you very much. We're going to move along here. That's that one. Again, just developing some of the pencils back to section studies, then into some form studies again. Plan view looks. I mean, then I tried going cab forward. Didn't have the same character to it. Then last but not least, right back into again that catamaran look, where this thing really starts to have some character to it. Over the top, and then this opens it all up. Then again, a 3/4 front, trying to get a feel for what it might look like at speed in the water. On the last sketch I did, which was really starting to tell a story with this guy, starts to really take on some character here. So from that study, I went from these studies over the course of the week, and then wrapped it up today with just going. Maybe it's much more of a foil or a tail fin back there that has a bit of a ballast system on it and a foil attached to it, which I thought had some health to it. And again, when you look at this. And then in the last sketch I did, which was this, I think that has some merit. I mean, there's something simple about that, but it has the same overall character to it. So I'll close with that. What do you think, gang? Any input at all? Any help here? Much appreciated, gang. Anybody? Any yays and nays? Doug, Wanderer, Landon, hope you're still there. Really thank you for the time spent here today, guys. Excellent. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I think what I'm going to do here, last but not least, I'll wrap the thing up here today. Thank you very much, Captain Nemo. You're awesome as well. I can't thank you enough for your kindness and that commentary about my wife's situation to all of you. Very nervous time, but it worked out well. Thank you. And it was not, nothing is, it's all benign. There's nothing serious about it. We'll find out what maybe some of the treatment might be in the next week or so. But thank you so much for your patience. And on that note, what I think I'll do here is maybe just kind of depart from this for next Tuesday and maybe switch gears and go to a different subject matter. And I'm going to come back to it. I'll make the announcement what I want to do. Little learning bits all through it. Yeah, CMUs. Let's see, these are great series as well, Doug. The little learning bits all throughout while seeing them. And yeah, thank you very much, Shadow. That's the intent. And I think it might be wise. I mean, I might take a minute, just kind of drop out a little bit and take this theme and develop it a little bit further and go into a phase 5 with a really good maybe composition for this thing at speed on the water. So I might not do that next Tuesday. I might just take a little bit of time to look at it and kind of reevaluate where we are and switch gears for a different. I might go to Ferrari Shark Nose P50 on Tuesday, or another set of series of maybe architecture. We'll see. But nonetheless, there's where we are today, gang. I, again, cannot thank you enough for being kind enough to hang on here. All of you who have been with me for the last hour or so. This has been a real journey. I've learned an awful lot about certain systems, especially empathy to product development and developing a shape and not falling in love with certain things, but kind of evolving it from start to finish. And I think you can see the absolute change of pace from where we started with this guy right here. That's where we started with that elevation right there, elevation and empathy into an element like that. Just really, that's the great thing. That's the great thing and the mystery of empathy. It's mysterious, it's provocative, and it's challenging. And I think that's what I like about it. There's all these elements come together to really force it upon you to think really deeply about what you're after. And it's much more emotional as opposed to, as I said, for Wanderer's sake, the form study is already there. You're developing the shape. It's already in existence, and you're putting some life to it, and massaging and changing it. So all that to say, thank you so much. Please take a moment to visit my website, drcontrast.com. And I think Shadow can be my witness here. We're going to start looking at adding some apparel product. We're finally putting some pieces together for a real good solid store. We've put a lot of print work, including some of this stuff and some of the Star Citizen spaceship material, the 400i, the Manticore, the Manta, all these pieces hopefully go up on the website in poster format or graphic format, and t-shirts as well. So looking forward to it. Wanderer, thanks so much. Dr. Contrast, can't wait to continue. Yeah, I think it's going to be great, Wanderer. And again, I can't thank you enough for compliment you for the work you're doing from start to finish. When I saw your last series of sketches, you can tell things are starting to hit really well for you. And I think that's exciting. So please keep feeding the sketches and don't worry about the number of them. I enjoy seeing them, and I'd just like to get back and forth with you on some input. And if you have any questions along the way in the next day or two, when you pass them along, please feel free to do so. Please visit my website at Dr. Contrast, Artbook, and PayPal, Patreon, please. Yeah, I got to do that. I've got the thing all roughed out, but I've just got to get it all set up here. And also, I've got a PayPal account, so hopefully we're going to be okay. We get the art book in there, the drawing book, and I also doing another one called Genesis, Captain Nemo, which takes you through all 4 disciplines with some illustration work. So all that's coming, and thank you so much, gang. Again, visit the website, drcontrast.com. There's some drawing programs on there, the website, and drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com if you have anything you want me to work on especially Wander, if there's some things you're dealing with. Landon, Doug, anybody that you want me to work with, if I can help you, I'll be more than happy to do so. So thank you again, gang. All the very best. I was close with this because it's really interesting. We're meeting with the various parties in the store core being worked on. Yeah, that's going to be neat. We're going to drive all the dogs, and let's hope it works and it doesn't become a real albatross for all of us. But it's been exciting. I've learned so much. I respect all of you in the audience there, and those of you who are tuning in. Cannot thank you enough. It's just great fun to have you on board. And above all else, I appreciate the impact back and forth. Yeah, that's good. That is not good. Try this, try that. It's all about a we phenomenon, not about me. It's about you. So thank you so much. And above all else, I'll close with this. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. All the best, gang. Thank you. And we'll see you on Tuesday.